little fireside chat. After the last staying warm car camping video, I got a ton of comments and questions. Some were questions, some were really good tips, and some were things that I should have explained better the first time around. So this isn't a redo, it's me responding to the patterns in the comments that I kept seeing. If you watched that video and still felt confused or cold or, maybe overthinking it, this one is for you. Let's do it. The first thing I saw, lots of questions on wool, why it works, and where it helps. And my dog will be joining us today. So one of the biggest themes in the comments of the video was wool. Wool blankets, moving blankets, sheepskins, anything with the word wool. A lot of people said some version of wool is a must. And that's not a myth. Wool is kind of awesome and it insulates really, really well. Wool can achieve an R value of roughly 3.5 to 4.3 per inch, which is solid insulation. That's why it works even when there's moisture and why it's been used for warmth forever and ever and ever. A few people also mentioned putting wool underneath them while they sleep, and that can be a good option too. Adding wool beneath you helps slow heat loss to the ground or into the surface of the car, which is where most people are actually getting cold anyway. That said, this is where context matters because context always matters. Wool is helpful, but it's not magic. Even at roughly R4, give or take, per inch, it doesn't come close to something like a dedicated winter sleeping pad that is specifically designed for cold weather. For example, the pad that I mentioned that I like to use is the Hestra sleeping system. It has an R value of over 11, which means it's doing way more heavy lifting when it comes to stopping heat loss. So think of wool as like a supplemental insulation, but not a replacement for a proper pad. That said, wool blankets are often just around, which means they might be on your couch or on your bed. And that means they're free. So even though they're heavy and bulky, that's totally fine because you're just sleeping in your car. One commenter even mentioned using a Harbor Freight moving blanket. I don't know much about those. I haven't used one. I don't know if they're wool, but the concept sounds similar. It's dense material, adds insulation, traps heat. Not elegant, not technical camping gear, but very functional for car camping. And if you have one, that's even better. So yes, wool underneath, wool on top, wool around you, wool everywhere, all valid, especially if you already have them in your house. Just make sure that your main insulation is doing the real work for you. The second thing I saw a lot in the comments or questions was all about sleeping bags, washing them, and how they actually work. And this one is important. Yes, you could absolutely put sleeping bags in the dryer, but I would recommend low heat only. But always check the tag too that comes from the manufacturer. Bigger issue that people don't realize is washing. Over time, your body oil soak into the insulation, especially the down. And when that happens, the insulation starts to clump, which prevents it from lofting. Loft is what traps all the warm air and keeps you warm. So if the down is dirty and clumping, it's not lofting, you're cold. So if your sleeping bag feels flatter than it used to or colder than you remember, it might not be the temp rating, it might just be dirty. So wash your bag properly. I like to use Nick wax. Put it in the dryer on low heat and then stick a couple tennis balls in there because those are going to break up the clumps of down, which can restore a surprising amount of loft and thus warmth. A clean bag and a dry bag are always going to be a warmer bag. Full stop. Next up, I saw quite a few comments about condensation and insulation on the windows. So let's talk about that. So a couple of people in the comments talked about windows and insulation. So yes, people do insulate windows to help prevent heat loss. You see it a lot. And that isn't wrong. I personally don't do it because I'm only in my car for a night or two. But let me explain. Condensation happens because your breath is warm and full of moisture. When that warm, moist air, when you breathe, gets out there and hits the cold glass of your car, the moisture condenses and turns into droplets on your windows. That moisture makes everything feel colder, and damp air pulls heat away from your body much faster, and wet surfaces inside the car don't help. Anybody that lives in a humid environment can agree to this. That is where ventilation comes in. A small amount of airflow lets that moist air escape through the airflow instead of building up inside your car. So drier air will actually feel warmer even at the same temperature. At the same time, insulating windows helps by reducing the cold surfaces inside the car, which slows heat loss and reduces how much condensation forms in the first place. So bottom line, you kind of want to do both. A lot of people use simple solutions here, like reflectics to cover the windows, foam panels, insulated window covers, or even just like thick fabric panels. You don't need anything fancy. The goal is just to reduce cold surfaces. And again, this is only if you're going to spend a lot of nights in your car. The sweet spot is going to be insulation and ventilation. Not wide open windows, but just enough to let a little bit of moisture and air out. And I will say there is a point where it's so cold that ventilation causes more heat loss than benefit. In those conditions, insulation and sealing drafts is going to matter way more, and condensation management becomes secondary. So this one is not about like hard and fast rules. It's about trial and error and finding that balance. I've lived here in the Colorado Rockies my entire life, and I have learned one thing from all my decades of playing outside in the winter. Your hands set the tone for everything. If you have cold fingers, you're miserable. If you can't feel your hands, you are just not going to have any fun. And that is why I only wear Hestra mittens. They are the warmest I've ever used, and they last forever. I've had this pair here for 10 years, and I still ski in them every single weekend. So yeah, whether I'm skiing, winter hiking, winter camping, or just dealing with really, really cold days, my Hestra mittens are the one item that I know is always going to be in my kit. As I mentioned in the video, I use a little buddy heater. But as somebody pointed out in the comments, they can cause fires and aren't really meant for enclosed spaces. This is totally true. That's why I only turn mine on before I go to bed for maybe a couple of minutes and never use it unattended or even for long periods of time. Honestly, it's more of an occasional thing when I'm like, OMG, I'm really cold and I can't warm up. I need a heater. That's it. So here is the reality. Small spaces amplify risks, and cars definitely fall into that category. Clearance with heaters matters, ventilation matters, and any active heat source needs to be treated seriously. No heater is going to replace insulation when you're in your car. No candle is going to replace a proper sleep system. If something requires constant attention or makes you uneasy enough that you're not even sleeping, it's probably not the right solution. If you really need to try something extra, go with the time-honored trick of boiling water and put it in your Nalgene. Or, as others pointed out, grab a few hand warmers and stick them along your body in your sleeping bag. We don't want warmth to be stressful. The last thing that I got more comments than I expected on was the bathroom. How do I stay warm to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night? How do I go to the bathroom in the middle of the night? Honestly, I didn't address that in the first video because the reality is there is no way to stay warm. So if I have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, I just get out of the car and go right there next to the car, next to the tire, wherever I can. And inevitably, outside in the cold air, I get a little chilled. So the best I can say is to make your bathroom breaks as quick as you possibly can. Don't hang out there longer than you need to, and scurry back into your car. Now, if things are really, 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 really freezing cold and you don't want to get out of the car, you can do what mountaineers do in high altitude situations. You can always try to pee in a bottle or something like that. For men, that's clearly a lot easier than it is for women. So do that at your own risk. I personally will only do that under extreme circumstances because accidentally peeing all over my sleeping bag is a risk that I am not often willing to take. So that is a wrap. All the hot comments and questions from our recent Staying Warm car camping video answered just for you. The big takeaway is still the same. Staying warm car camping is all about systems, prep, and realistic choices, not extremes and not anything fancy. Use what you already have when it makes sense and invest where it actually matters and if you can. And don't overcomplicate it. If you missed the original Stay Warm While Car Camping video, I'll link it below. That one lays the foundation while this one fills in the gaps. And if you've got more questions or tips, keep dropping them in the comments because obviously I clearly read them. See you out there.